I walked into the office that Monday morning expecting another typical day at Patterson Tech Consulting, the company where I had poured 8 years of my life into building something extraordinary. Instead, I found my access card deactivated and my nameplate replaced with one reading, Dylan Hartwell, Marketing Director. My corner office, my awards, my carefully curated workspace. Everything was gone. CEO Richard Hartwell had eliminated my position overnight, without warning, handing my entire department to his 25-year-old nephew Dylan, who possessed zero marketing experience but flaunted an MBA from some expensive private university. Dylan actually smirked when he informed me the company was evolving beyond my outdated work practices, and I would now report to him as a marketing coordinator. Standing in that hallway watching this kid occupy the office I had earned through years of dedication, I felt my world crumbling. The full scope of my professional assassination became clear as Dylan strutted around like he owned the place, which apparently he now did. My salary had been slashed by 40%. My corner office with the downtown Austin skyline view was his, and I found myself relocated to a windowless cubicle positioned awkwardly near the break room where the coffee machine's constant grinding would become my new soundtrack. The company-wide meeting Dylan called that afternoon remains etched in my memory as one of the most humiliating experiences of my career. He stood at the head of the conference table adjusting his unnecessarily expensive tie and announced his plans to implement fresh strategies that would revolutionize our approach to client relations. Every campaign I had developed, every award-winning strategy that had built our reputation, he dismissed as yesterday's thinking, with the casual arrogance only someone who had never earned anything could possess.
"We're moving into the modern era,"
Dylan declared, clicking through a presentation filled with buzzwords and empty corporate speak. "Our clients need to understand that traditional marketing is dead. We're talking influencer partnerships, viral social media campaigns, authentic brand experiences that resonate with younger demographics." I watched our team's faces around the table. Sarah Martinez, my most talented strategist, looked confused and concerned. Marcus Thompson, our data analyst who could read market trends better than anyone, appeared genuinely worried. Jennifer Chen from our creative team sat quietly, but I could see the skepticism in her expression. These were professionals who understood our industry, who had worked alongside me to build something meaningful. Dylan's first major decision involved our largest client, Patterson Industries, a conservative manufacturing company that had trusted us with their marketing for over 5 years. Margaret Patterson, their CEO, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 60s who valued professionalism and results above trendy gimmicks. Dylan scheduled a meeting with her that very week, confident he could modernize their approach. I sat in that conference room relegated to taking notes like an intern while Dylan pitched his vision to Mrs. Patterson. He suggested replacing their successful trade publication advertisements with TikTok dance videos featuring their industrial equipment. He proposed hiring teenage influencers to promote their B2B services to other manufacturers. He actually used the phrase authentic brand storytelling through dance challenges, with complete seriousness. Mrs. Patterson's expression grew colder with each ridiculous suggestion. When Dylan finished his presentation with a flourish, asking what she thought about disrupting the industrial marketing space. She stood up slowly, gathered her materials, and stated simply, "This partnership is no longer beneficial to Patterson Industries." She walked out without another word, taking a $2 million annual contract with her. Dylan laughed it off once she left, turning to Richard and saying, "Older executives just don't understand modern marketing strategies. She'll come around when she sees the results other companies are getting with our innovative approaches." The aftermath of that meeting rippled through our small team immediately. Sarah approached me privately later that day, her usual confidence replaced by genuine concern. "Blair, what just happened in there? Mrs. Patterson has been our most loyal client. That campaign we developed for them last year increased their leads by 30%. Marcus joined our quiet conversation by the water cooler, keeping his voice low. "Dylan just cost us our biggest account on his first client meeting. How is management okay with this?" Jennifer appeared equally disturbed when she pulled me aside the following morning. "He fired Linda yesterday," she whispered, referring to our longtime graphic designer who had created some of our most successful visual campaigns. "Dylan said her work looked too corporate and not authentic enough. He hired some guy named Tyler, who apparently was his fraternity brother. Tyler's portfolio is just Instagram photos and memes." The reality of our situation became clearer each day. Dylan was systematically dismantling everything we had built, replacing experienced professionals with his unqualified friends, and treating our proven strategies as outdated obstacles to his vision. But the most devastating blow came when Richard called me into his office at the end of that first week. "Blair, I need to address some concerning reports I've been receiving," Richard said, not even offering me a seat. His tone carried none of the warmth he had shown during my previous 8 years of exemplary service. "Dylan has mentioned that you've been expressing negative opinions about our new direction to clients and team members." My heart pounded as I realized what was happening. "Richard, I haven't said anything inappropriate to anyone. I'm concerned about the strategic changes, but I've maintained complete professionalism. Dylan feels you're actively undermining his authority and trying to sabotage his initiatives." Richard continued, his expression stern. "I want to be very clear that any disruptive behavior will result in immediate termination. We're moving forward with these changes, and everyone needs to be fully supportive." Walking back to my cramped cubicle, I understood that Dylan had already begun poisoning Richard against me. This wasn't just about reorganizing the department. It was about completely removing me from the picture while ensuring I couldn't defend myself or expose what was really happening. The disasters started piling up faster than Dylan could spin them into successes. Within 2 weeks of his Patterson Industries debacle, we lost 2 more significant clients who found his approaches either unprofessional or completely irrelevant to their business needs. Hartman Manufacturing canceled their contract after Dylan suggested they sponsor a gaming tournament to reach their target demographic of other manufacturing companies. Global Solutions terminated their agreement when Tyler Dillon's fraternity brother turned creative director delivered marketing materials that looked like they were designed by a middle school student. But here's where the situation became truly insidious. Richard began calling me into private meetings, instructing me to quietly address the client concerns without Dylan's knowledge. He would never explicitly admit that Dylan's strategies were failing, but he clearly understood that someone needed to fix the mounting problems. "Blair, I need you to reach out to Patterson Industries personally," Richard said during one of these covert meetings. "See if you can smooth things over and potentially salvage that relationship. But this needs to be handled delicately. Dylan shouldn't be involved in these conversations right now." So I found myself working nights and weekends, desperately trying to repair relationships that Dylan had damaged during regular business hours. I called Mrs. Patterson personally, apologizing for the confusion and proposing a return to the strategic approach that had previously generated excellent results for her company. She agreed to consider resuming our partnership, but only if she could work directly with me and avoid any further interactions with Dylan. I rebuilt presentations that Tyler had butchered, redesigned marketing materials that looked professional instead of juvenile, and crafted strategies that actually aligned with our clients' needs and target markets. But every improvement I made, every client relationship I salvaged, Dylan would claim credit for during the next team meeting. "I'm glad to see our new approaches are starting to generate positive responses," Dylan would announce to the group. The key was giving our strategies time to develop and showing clients the value of innovative thinking. The stress of this double life began affecting my health in ways I had never experienced. Migraines became a weekly occurrence, sharp pains that would start behind my left eye and spread across my skull until I could barely concentrate. Sleep became elusive as I lay awake wondering how Dylan's next decision would create problems I would be secretly asked to solve. My boyfriend Jake, a software engineer who had always supported my career ambitions, started expressing concern about the changes he was observing in me. "Blair, you're exhausted all the time. You're working longer hours than ever but seem miserable about your job. Maybe it's time to start looking for something else." The suggestion made perfect sense, but my reduced salary made leaving without another position financially impossible. Dylan's demotion had cut my income significantly, and Austin's competitive job market meant I couldn't afford to quit without a solid backup plan. Meanwhile, Dylan's incompetence extended beyond client relations into basic business management. I discovered he was charging personal expenses to company accounts, disguising his rent payments as marketing consultation fees, and billing his weekend Las Vegas trips as brand research excursions. When I brought these irregularities to Richard's attention, hoping he would finally recognize the scope of the problem, he dismissed them as minor accounting errors and told me to handle the corrections quietly. "Dylan is still adjusting to his new responsibilities," Richard explained. "These kinds of small mistakes are normal during transition periods. Just make sure the accounting is cleaned up without creating unnecessary drama." The most devastating blow came when Dylan announced he was bringing in an outside consulting firm to evaluate our department's efficiency and recommend structural improvements. The firm was called Strategic Solutions Consulting, and Dylan presented their proposal with obvious excitement during a team meeting. "We want to ensure we're operating at peak efficiency," Dylan explained, projecting their glossy presentation onto our conference room screen. "Strategic Solutions will conduct a comprehensive analysis of our workflow's personnel effectiveness and strategic alignment with company goals." I researched Strategic Solutions Consulting that evening and discovered the firm had been founded just 6 months earlier by someone named Brett Morrison. Further investigation revealed that Brett Morrison was Dylan's college roommate, and their consulting fee exceeded my entire annual salary. This wasn't an evaluation. It was an expensive scheme to justify whatever changes Dylan wanted to implement while funneling company money to his friends. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Dylan wasn't just incompetent, he was systematically looting the company while positioning himself to eliminate anyone who might expose his actions. And Richard, whether through willful ignorance or active complicity, was enabling every step of this process. Strategic Solutions. Consulting's evaluation process was a masterpiece of predetermined conclusions disguised as objective analysis. Brett Morrison, Dylan's roommate, spent 2 weeks conducting interviews with team members and reviewing our performance metrics. His questions were clearly designed to generate specific responses that would support whatever recommendations Dylan had already decided to implement. "Blair, tell me about your resistance to adopting innovative marketing strategies," Brett would ask during my interview, framing his questions to make my experience sound like stubborn inflexibility. "How do you think your attachment to traditional approaches might be limiting the team's potential for growth?" The final report was exactly what I expected, a polished document that praised Dylan's visionary leadership and strategic innovation while criticizing my resistance to change and outdated methodologies. Brett recommended eliminating 3 positions from my former team and restructuring the entire department under Dylan's complete control. Sarah Martinez was the first casualty. Sarah, who had developed our most successful client retention strategies and consistently exceeded her performance targets, was terminated for failure to adapt to evolving company culture. Dylan actually smiled when he delivered the news, telling her that her traditional mindset was incompatible with their new direction. Watching Sarah clear out her desk was one of the most heartbreaking moments of this entire ordeal. She had been more than a colleague. She was a friend who shared my passion for creating meaningful marketing strategies that actually helped our clients grow their businesses. As she packed her personal items, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Blair, this isn't about performance or culture. They're getting rid of anyone who might question what Dylan is doing. Please be careful." Marcus Thompson quit 2 days later, rather than endure the humiliation Dylan had planned for him. During a client presentation for TechFlow Solutions, Dylan publicly contradicted Marcus's data analysis, claiming his numbers were pessimistic and didn't account for exponential growth potential through viral marketing strategies. Marcus had 20 years of experience in market analysis, and watching Dylan dismiss his expertise in front of our clients was more than he could tolerate.
"I won't be part of this amateur hour operation,"
Marcus told me privately before submitting his resignation. "Dylan doesn't understand the first thing about data analysis, but he's willing to embarrass experienced professionals to protect his own ego. This company is headed for disaster." Jennifer Chen managed to transfer to the accounting department before Dylan could target her, recognizing that staying in marketing meant eventual termination or resignation. Her departure left me completely isolated within my former team, surrounded by Dylan's inexperienced friends who treated me like an annoying obstacle to their success. Dylan's behavior became increasingly arrogant as his control over the department solidified. He would arrive at 10:30 in the morning, leave by 4 in the afternoon, and spend most of his time in between playing mobile games in his office while I handled all actual client work. He started referring to me as his assistant in front of clients, introducing me as someone who helps with administrative tasks and traditional marketing support. But the situation that finally pushed me past my breaking point involved Emma Rodriguez, our new intern, who had recently graduated from UT Austin with a marketing degree. Emma was bright, enthusiastic, and eager to learn the business. She reminded me of myself when I first started in marketing, full of ideas and determined to prove her value. Dylan's treatment of Emma was disgusting and completely inappropriate. He made comments about her appearance during team meetings, suggesting she wear more professional outfits that would make better impressions on clients. He invited her to private mentoring sessions at expensive restaurants, claiming these dinner meetings were essential for her professional development. When Emma expressed discomfort with these invitations, Dylan would laugh and say she needed to understand that networking was crucial in the marketing industry. Emma finally came to me in tears after Dylan cornered her in the supply room and made explicit comments about what kind of extra credit work might help advance her career. She was terrified of reporting him because she needed the internship credit to graduate, but she couldn't continue enduring his harassment. I immediately reported Dylan's behavior to Human Resources, providing detailed accounts of Emma's experiences and offering to connect HR with Emma directly. The response was exactly what I should have expected: complete dismissal disguised as concern. "Blair, we appreciate you bringing this matter to our attention," said Helen Walsh, our HR director and Richard's wife's cousin. However, after speaking with Dylan, we believe this situation involves some misunderstandings about professional mentoring practices. Dylan was simply trying to provide Emma with networking opportunities and career guidance. We don't want to discourage positive mentorship relationships based on oversensitive interpretations of friendly professional interactions. The meeting ended with Helen suggesting that Emma might benefit from learning to navigate professional relationships more effectively, and warning me against creating hostile work environments through unfounded accusations. That evening, I discovered the final piece of Dylan's master plan when I overheard him talking to Richard in the conference room after most employees had left for the day. I was working late again trying to salvage a client presentation that Tyler had ruined with comic sans fons and meme references when I heard Dylan's voice carrying down the hallway.
Uncle Richard, I think we need to discuss Blair's future with the company, Dylan was saying.
Her performance has been consistently disappointing and her attitude is affecting team morale. I've been trying to work with her, but she seems determined to undermine our new strategies.
What are you recommending? Richard asked.
I think we should promote me to Vice President of Marketing within the next few months and eventually Chief Marketing Officer, Dylan replied confidently.
I've already identified several qualified candidates from my network who could replace the remaining staff members who aren't adapting well to our culture changes.
I pressed myself against the wall, listening to them plan my complete elimination from the company I had helped build. Dylan was systematically replacing every experienced professional with his unqualified friends, transforming our marketing department into his personal employment agency.
I've also been thinking about bringing in more consultants to help streamline our operations, Dylan continued. Brett's company has some excellent recommendations for improving efficiency and reducing unnecessary overhead.
The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, covering plans to hire Dylan's fraternity brothers for senior positions and eliminate anyone who might question their qualifications. By the time they finished talking, I understood that my days at Patterson Tech Consulting were numbered, and Dylan was positioning himself to inherit complete control over the department I had spent 8 years building. But as I sat in my cubicle that night listening to the coffee machine cycle through another grinding session, I realized something important had shifted inside me. The heartbreak and humiliation were still there, but they were being joined by something else. A cold, focused determination to expose exactly what Dylan was doing to our company. Something crystallized in my mind that night as I sat in my cramped cubicle surrounded by the remnants of my former career. Instead of letting Dylan's systematic destruction continue unchecked, I was going to gather evidence of every illegal and unethical thing he had done. If Richard wanted to play favorites with his corrupt nephew, he was going to face the consequences of enabling fraud and harassment. I started documenting everything with the methodical precision I had always applied to marketing campaigns. Every conversation, every inappropriate comment, every financial irregularity became part of a comprehensive file I was building against Dylan. I began recording meetings on my phone, being careful to position myself where the audio would be clear while keeping the device hidden. My investigation into Dylan's expense fraud revealed problems far beyond what I had initially discovered. He wasn't just charging personal expenses to company accounts. He was creating fake vendors to bill for services that never existed. A company called Digital Innovation Solutions had charged us $15,000 for strategic brand consulting, but the address led to Dylan's apartment complex. Creative Media Partners billed $12,000 for content development, but their phone number was disconnected and their website looked like it had been created in an hour. Working through lunch breaks and staying late into the evenings, I traced these fraudulent transactions through our accounting system. The pattern was always the same. Dylan would approve payment to a vendor with an impressive name. The invoice would be processed by Helen Walsh in HR without verification, and the money would disappear into accounts that seemed to benefit Dylan's friends or Dylan himself. But my most shocking discovery came from reconnecting with former employees who had left Patterson Tech Consulting over the past 2 years. I reached out to David Kim, our former IT director, who had resigned suddenly 18 months earlier, claiming he wanted to pursue other opportunities.
"Blair, I'm glad you called,"
David said when I contacted him. I've been wondering when someone would start asking the right questions about what's really happening at that company. David revealed that Richard's pattern of hiring unqualified relatives extended far beyond Dylan's recent appointment. His brother-in-law now ran the IT department despite having no technical background beyond basic computer skills. Richard's wife's cousin Helen controlled human resources without any HR education or experience. His nephew, through marriage, headed the accounting department after working as a junior bookkeeper for 6 months. "The whole company is becoming a family employment program," David explained. "Richard systematically pushes out experienced professionals and replaces them with relatives who won't question his decisions. I left because I saw what was coming, but I should have spoken up." Through David, I connected with other former employees who shared similar stories. Each person described the same pattern: excellent performance reviews followed by sudden criticism, increased scrutiny of their work, and eventual pressure to resign or face termination. Richard had been methodically transforming Patterson Tech Consulting into his personal kingdom where competence mattered less than family connections. My investigation into Dylan's embezzlement uncovered transactions totaling over $400,000 in fraudulent payments over the past 8 months. The scope was staggering, involving dozens of fake vendors and elaborate schemes to disguise theft as legitimate business expenses. Dylan had been treating the company treasury like his personal checking account, funding his lifestyle and paying his friends for imaginary services. But the most damaging evidence I discovered involved the blackmail scheme that explained Richard's willingness to protect Dylan despite his obvious incompetence. While copying files from Dylan's computer during one of his extended lunch breaks, I found email exchanges between Dylan and Richard that revealed the true nature of their relationship. Dylan had discovered that Richard was having an affair with his secretary, Amanda Foster, and had been using this information to extort protection and promotions. The emails were explicit about their arrangement. Dylan would keep quiet about the affair as long as Richard gave him whatever position he wanted and protected him from any consequences of his actions.
"Uncle Richard, I think we both understand the importance of maintaining family loyalty," Dylan had written in one email. "I'm sure Aunt Catherine would be very interested to know how you've been spending your afternoon meetings with Amanda. I'm confident you'll continue supporting my career development as we discussed." Catherine Hartwell owned 40% of Patterson Tech Consulting through her family trust, making her a significant stakeholder in the company's success. If she discovered Richard's affair and Dylan's blackmail scheme, the consequences would extend far beyond personal embarrassment. Reading these emails, I finally understood why Richard had been willing to destroy his own company to accommodate Dylan's demands. He wasn't just playing favorites. He was being systematically extorted by his own nephew. The final piece of my investigation revealed Dylan's most audacious plan, yet he was preparing to frame me for his embezzlement. During my secret documentation process, I discovered that Dylan had been creating false documents showing that I had authorized many of the fraudulent payments. He had forged my electronic signature on purchase orders and created email trails suggesting I had been working with the fake vendors. Dylan's plan was diabolical in its simplicity. He would present Richard with evidence of my theft, claim he had discovered my crimes through diligent investigation, and position himself as the hero who exposed corruption within the company. Richard would have no choice but to have me arrested, eliminating the one person who might expose their entire scheme. But Dylan had made one crucial mistake in his planning. He had underestimated my determination and investigative skills. While he was busy creating false evidence against me, I was building an airtight case against him that included financial records, recorded conversations, testimony from multiple witnesses, and documentation of the blackmail scheme. As I compiled my evidence into comprehensive files, I realized I had enough material to destroy both Dylan and Richard while protecting myself from their attempts at retaliation.
The question now was how to deploy this information most effectively to ensure justice was served and prevent them from covering up their crimes. Time was running out faster than I had anticipated. Through my careful monitoring of Dylan's communications, I learned that he planned to present his fabricated evidence against me to Richard within the next week. Once that happened, I would be arrested before I could expose the truth about what had really been happening at Patterson Tech Consulting. I accelerated my evidence-gathering operation and began reaching out to potential allies who could help me when the truth came to light. Emma Rodriguez, still suffering from Dylan's harassment, agreed to document her experiences and connect me with 2 other female employees who had endured similar treatment. Together, we compiled detailed accounts of Dylan's inappropriate behavior, including dates, times, witnesses, and specific comments he had made. Emma's courage in coming forward inspired me to contact an employment attorney named Patricia Santos, who specialized in workplace harassment and discrimination cases. Patricia reviewed our documentation and immediately recognized the severity of the situation. "This isn't just harassment," Patricia explained during our consultation. "What you're describing involves systematic retaliation, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit multiple crimes. Dylan and Richard have created a hostile work environment while stealing from the company and destroying careers to cover their tracks." Through Patricia, I learned about additional legal protections for whistleblowers and the proper procedures for reporting financial crimes to federal authorities. She also connected me with an investigative journalist named Michael Rodriguez, who wrote for the Austin Business Chronicle and had been covering corporate corruption cases throughout Texas. Michael became extremely interested in our story, particularly the family nepotism angle and the scale of the embezzlement scheme. "This is exactly the kind of story that needs to be told," he said during our meeting at a coffee shop far from our office building. "Small business corruption often goes unreported because victims don't have the resources to fight back. Your documentation could expose a pattern that's probably happening at companies throughout the city." Meanwhile, I continued rebuilding relationships with the clients Dylan had alienated, being careful not to directly criticize his decisions while demonstrating that I understood their needs and concerns. Mrs. Patterson from Patterson Industries agreed to meet with me privately after I explained that I was no longer in a decision-making role, but wanted to ensure her experience with our company had been satisfactory. "Blair, I've worked with your company for 5 years because of the professionalism and expertise you brought to our relationship," Mrs. Patterson said during our lunch meeting. "That young man who presented those ridiculous social media ideas clearly doesn't understand our industry or our customer base. If there's ever an opportunity to work with you directly again, Patterson Industries would be very interested." Similar conversations with other former clients revealed the extent of the damage Dylan's incompetence had caused to our company's reputation. TechFlow Solutions. Our largest remaining client expressed serious concerns about the quality of recent work and the lack of strategic thinking in their current marketing campaigns. "We're considering other options for our marketing needs," explained Janet Morrison, TechFlow's CEO. "The level of professionalism has declined significantly, and we're not seeing the results we've come to expect from Patterson Tech Consulting." I documented these conversations carefully, understanding that they demonstrated how Dylan's actions were threatening the company's financial stability. Losing TechFlow Solutions would eliminate 30% of our annual revenue, potentially forcing layoffs and threatening everyone's job security. My investigation into the consulting firm fraud revealed additional crimes I hadn't initially discovered. Strategic Solutions. Consulting owned by Dylan's roommate Brett Morrison had been billing Patterson Tech Consulting for extensive strategic analysis that never occurred. Brett had charged us for dozens of hours of industry research and competitive analysis that consisted of copying generic information from business websites.
The fake consulting arrangement was actually more sophisticated than I had originally understood. Dylan and Brett had created multiple shell companies to disguise the money flow and make their scheme harder to trace. Digital innovation solutions, creative media partners, and strategic brand consultants were all variations of the same fraud designed to funnel company money into accounts controlled by Dylan's network. I also discovered that Dylan had been sharing confidential client information with his friends, including pricing strategies, competitive intelligence, and proprietary business plans. This information had been sold to competing firms, creating additional revenue streams while compromising our clients' trust and potentially exposing Patterson Tech Consulting to lawsuits. But my most crucial discovery came when I gained access to Richard's email account during one of his extended absences from the office. The correspondence between Richard and Dylan revealed the full scope of their conspiracy, including plans to eliminate me and several other employees who might expose their crimes. Blair is becoming a problem that needs to be addressed permanently. Dylan had written to Richard. I've prepared documentation showing her involvement in the vendor fraud scheme. Once you present this evidence to the authorities, she'll be arrested and discredited before she can cause any real damage to our operations. Richard's response was equally damning. I'll contact the district attorney's office next week. Make sure all the documentation looks authentic and can't be traced back to you. We need this situation resolved quickly before she starts asking the wrong questions. Reading these emails, I realized that my arrest was imminent, and that Dylan had been more thorough in his planning than I had initially understood. He had created false financial records, forged email communications, and planted physical evidence in my desk and computer that would support his claims about my involvement in the fraud. The sophistication of Dylan's frame-up operation demonstrated that his incompetence as a marketing director had masked considerable criminal intelligence. He had been systematically building a case against me while committing the very crimes he planned to accuse me of, ensuring that any investigation would focus on me rather than his own actions. But Dylan's overconfidence had led him to document his crimes extensively, leaving electronic trails that proved his guilt while exposing the conspiracy between him and Richard. My evidence file now included recorded conversations, email communications, financial records, witness testimony, and documentation of the blackmail scheme that explained Richard's motivations. As I prepared my final evidence package, I realized I had built a case that would not only clear my name, but expose the entire network of corruption that had infected Patterson Tech Consulting. The question now was how to present this information in a way that would ensure justice was served before Dylan could destroy the evidence or disappear with the stolen money. With less than 48 hours before my planned arrest, I launched a coordinated counterattack that would simultaneously expose Dylan's crimes, protect myself from his false accusations, and ensure that justice was served. The strategy required precise timing and multiple moving parts, but my experience in managing complex marketing campaigns had prepared me for exactly this kind of strategic execution. My first move was providing Michael Rodriguez at the Austin Business Chronicle with the complete evidence package, including financial records, recorded conversations, email communications, and testimony from multiple witnesses. Michael had been preparing his article for weeks, waiting for my signal to publish. The story would expose the embezzlement, sexual harassment, nepotism, and blackmail scheme in comprehensive detail. This is going to be front-page news, Michael assured me during our final meeting. The evidence you've gathered is overwhelming. Dylan and Richard won't be able to deny or explain away what you've documented. Simultaneously, I contacted the FBI's white-collar crime division in Austin and provided them with evidence of Dylan's embezzlement and fraud. Agent Sarah Chen reviewed my documentation and immediately recognized the severity of the crimes. This represents systematic theft and conspiracy involving hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Agent Chen explained. We'll need to move quickly to preserve evidence and prevent any attempts to destroy documentation or transfer assets. I also filed reports with the IRS regarding Dylan's failure to pay taxes on the stolen money, the Texas Attorney General's office regarding the fraudulent business practices, and the Securities and Exchange Commission regarding potential violations of corporate governance requirements. The employment lawsuit Patricia Santos had prepared was filed simultaneously documenting the harassment, wrongful demotion, and retaliation I had endured. Emma Rodriguez and the other harassment victims joined the lawsuit, creating a comprehensive case against both Dylan and the company's failure to address his behavior. But my most strategic move involved contacting Catherine Hartwell Richards' wife and 40% owner of Patterson Tech Consulting. I arranged to meet with Catherine at her investment office, explaining that I had information about threats to her financial interests in the company. Catherine was a sharp, experienced businesswoman who had built her own successful investment firm before marrying Richard. When I presented her with evidence of Richard's affair, Dylan's blackmail scheme, and the massive embezzlement that was threatening the company's survival, her response was swift and decisive. Richard has been lying to me about the company's performance while allowing his nephew to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars, Catherine said after reviewing my documentation. This ends today. Catherine immediately contacted her attorney and began preparing legal action to remove Richard from his position as CEO while protecting her investment in the company. As a 40% owner, she had significant influence over corporate governance and could demand accountability for the financial crimes that had been committed. I also reached out to our major clients, providing them with evidence of how Dylan's incompetence and fraud had affected their accounts. Rather than simply criticizing Dylan's performance, I documented how their confidential information had been compromised and their marketing investments had been misappropriated. TechFlow Solutions CEO Janet Morrison was furious when she learned that Dylan had been sharing their proprietary business strategies with competing firms. This is a complete breach of our trust and potentially violates our confidentiality agreements, she said. We'll be terminating our contract immediately and considering legal action. Patterson Industries Global Solutions and our other former clients expressed similar outrage about the mismanagement of their accounts and the misuse of their confidential information. Several companies indicated they would be interested in working with me directly once I was no longer associated with Patterson Tech Consulting. On the morning before my scheduled arrest, everything came together simultaneously in what felt like a perfectly choreographed operation. The FBI arrived at Patterson Tech Consulting with search warrants seizing computers, financial records, and filing cabinets while employees watched in shock. Dylan's reaction to the FBI raid was exactly what I had expected. He immediately tried to point them toward me, claiming that I was the one they should be investigating for embezzlement and fraud. But Agent Chen was already familiar with Dylan's false accusations and had reviewed the evidence proving his guilt. Mr. Hartwell, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, Agent Chen announced as Dylan's face turned pale. You have the right to remain silent. Michael Rodriguez's article hit the front page of the Austin Business Chronicle that same morning, detailing the entire corruption scheme under the headline, Local Tech Company CEO Enabled Nephew's Massive Fraud and Harassment Scheme. The story included interviews with former employees, documentation of the financial crimes, and analysis of how the company's reputation had been damaged by Dylan's incompetence. Catherine Hartwell arrived at the office with her attorney and a team of forensic accountants, demanding Richard's immediate resignation and threatening criminal charges if he didn't cooperate with the investigation. Her 40% ownership stake gave her the leverage to force changes in company leadership while protecting the interests of remaining employees and clients. But the most satisfying moment came when I discovered that Dylan had fled the country. Using money he had stolen from the company, Dylan had purchased a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country, abandoning his uncle and leaving Richard to face the consequences of their crimes alone. Richard's expression when he learned about Dylan's escape was a mixture of betrayal, rage, and despair. He finally understood that his nephew had been manipulating him from the beginning, planning to disappear with the stolen money while Richard faced arrest and imprisonment.
"He played me,"
Richard said to Catherine during one of their heated confrontations in his office. "Everything Dylan told me about Blair, about the company's direction, about protecting the family. He was setting me up to take the blame while he planned his escape." Dylan's betrayal of Richard was the perfect ending to their corrupt partnership. The nephew who had claimed to value family loyalty had ultimately proven that his only loyalty was to himself and his criminal ambitions. The aftermath unfolded with the swift precision of justice finally served after months of systematic corruption and abuse. The FBI's investigation revealed that Dylan's crimes extended far beyond what even my comprehensive documentation had uncovered. His embezzlement totaled over $600,000 when all the fraudulent transactions were traced, involving complex schemes that had been operating for nearly a year before I began my investigation. Dylan was indicted in absentia for embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and violation of federal computer crime statutes. The international warrant issued by Interpol meant that he could be arrested and extradited if he ever tried to return to the United States or travel to any country with extradition agreements. His carefully planned escape had transformed him from a privileged corporate executive into an international fugitive. Richard's arrest 3 days after the FBI raid marked the complete collapse of his family empire at Patterson Tech Consulting. Charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice accessory to fraud, and violation of his fiduciary duties as CEO, Richard faced a potential sentence of 15 to 20 years in federal prison. His marriage to Catherine ended immediately when she filed for divorce and took control of the company through her ownership stake. The board of directors, led by Catherine and the company's other investors, asked me to return as chief marketing officer with a 40% salary increase, equity participation, and complete authority to rebuild the marketing department according to professional standards rather than family connections. The offer represented not just vindication of my abilities, but recognition that competence and integrity were more valuable than nepotism and corruption. However, I had already decided on a different path forward. The wrongful termination and harassment lawsuit Patricia Santos had filed settled for $250,000, plus attorney fees and a commitment from the company to implement comprehensive anti-harassment policies. I used this settlement combined with my savings and a small business loan to start my own marketing consultancy focused on serving the clients who had been damaged by Dylan's incompetence. Patterson Industries became my first client, with Mrs. Patterson expressing enthusiasm about working with someone who understood their industry and respected their business culture. "Blair, I never wanted to end our relationship with Patterson Tech Consulting," she explained during our contract signing. "I just couldn't work with someone who treated our business like a joke. This partnership gives us the professionalism and expertise we've always valued." TechFlow Solutions. Global Solutions and 3 other former clients followed Patterson Industries to my new consultancy, bringing enough business to ensure immediate success and sustainable growth. Janet Morrison from TechFlow Solutions became one of my strongest advocates, referring additional clients and praising my strategic approach during industry conferences. "Working with Blair's consultancy has been a completely different experience," Janet told a gathering of Austin business leaders. "We're getting the innovative thinking we need while maintaining the professionalism and industry knowledge that drives real results." Emma Rodriguez and the other harassment victims received settlements totaling over $100,000, while Dylan faced additional federal charges for sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment. Emma used her settlement to complete her degree and accepted a position with my consultancy where she could learn marketing in an environment that valued her contributions rather than exploiting her vulnerability. My former team members, Sarah Martinez, Marcus Thompson, and Jennifer Chen, all joined my new company, creating a work environment based on mutual respect, professional competence, and ethical business practices. Sarah became my partner in the firm, Marcus headed our analytics division, and Jennifer led our creative team. Together, we built something better than what we had lost at Patterson Tech Consulting. The media attention surrounding our case led to speaking opportunities at business conferences throughout Texas, where I shared our story as an example of how to combat workplace corruption and stand up for professional integrity. Patricia Santos joined me for many of these presentations, discussing the legal resources available to employees facing similar situations. Blair's case demonstrates that systematic documentation, strategic thinking, and moral courage can overcome even sophisticated criminal schemes, Patricia explained to audiences of business professionals. Too often, employees feel powerless when facing corruption and harassment. This story proves that individuals can successfully fight back when they're willing to take the necessary risks and seek the right support. The Austin Business Chronicle's coverage of our story earned Michael Rodriguez a Regional Journalism Award for investigative reporting. His follow-up articles tracked the criminal proceedings and highlighted the importance of corporate accountability in preventing similar corruption schemes. Richard ultimately served 18 months in federal prison and paid over $400,000 in restitution to Patterson Tech Consulting and its clients. His cooperation with federal authorities led to additional investigations of corporate corruption in the Austin business community, resulting in several other prosecutions. Patterson Tech Consulting, under Catherine's leadership, and with consulting support from my firm, recovered its reputation and became more successful than it had ever been under Richard's management. Catherine implemented corporate governance policies that prevented family members from receiving preferential treatment and established clear accountability measures for all management positions. The company's recovery became a case study in how businesses can overcome internal corruption and rebuild client trust through transparency and professional competence. Catherine often credited our collaboration with helping her understand how to balance family relationships with business responsibilities. Blair taught me that protecting incompetent family members ultimately hurts everyone involved, Catherine explained during a business panel discussion. Real family loyalty means maintaining standards that protect the business and all the employees who depend on its success. 1 year after Dylan's crimes were exposed, I received the Austin Marketing Association's Professional Excellence Award, recognizing both my individual achievements and my role in exposing corporate corruption within our industry. The ceremony was attended by clients, colleagues, and business leaders who had followed our story throughout the legal proceedings. Standing at the podium that evening, looking out at an audience that included Mrs. Patterson, Janet Morrison, Catherine Hartwell, and my team members who had supported me through the worst period of my career, I reflected on the lessons this experience had taught me about integrity, resilience, and the importance of fighting for what's right. When I first discovered Dylan's crimes and Richard's complicity, I felt powerless and alone, I told the audience. But I learned that documentation, strategic thinking, and moral courage can overcome even the most sophisticated corruption schemes. Most importantly, I discovered that standing up for integrity not only protects yourself, but creates opportunities to build something better than what was destroyed. The investigation and legal proceedings had been exhausting, stressful, and sometimes frightening. But they had also demonstrated that justice is possible when people are willing to gather evidence, seek proper legal support, and take calculated risks to expose wrongdoing. My experience taught me that the worst betrayals can sometimes lead to the greatest opportunities for growth and success. Dylan's attempt to destroy my career ultimately forced me to discover strengths and capabilities I might never have developed otherwise. His crimes created the circumstances that allowed me to build a more successful business while helping other professionals avoid similar exploitation. The story also reinforced my belief that competence, integrity, and hard work will ultimately triumph over corruption, nepotism, and mediocrity. It may take time for justice to prevail, but systematic documentation and strategic action can overcome even well-planned criminal schemes. As I concluded my acceptance speech that evening, I shared the most important lesson I had learned throughout this ordeal. When you're facing systematic injustice, remember that you're more capable than you realize. Document everything, build strategic alliances, and don't be afraid to fight back through proper legal channels. Integrity and competence will always triumph over corruption and incompetence, even when the battle seems impossible to win. The audience's standing ovation that night represented more than recognition for my professional achievements. It celebrated the principle that individuals can successfully challenge corruption and create positive change in their workplaces and communities. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to take credit for your work or push you out of a position you earned? How did you handle it? And what advice would you give others dealing with workplace injustice? I'd love to hear your experiences and thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges and fighting for what's right. Share this with anyone who might be facing similar struggles. Sometimes knowing that others have successfully fought back can provide the courage needed to take action. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you're stronger and more capable than you realize when facing adversity.